The story you tell yourself is real. I want you to stop for a moment and consider this. Not as a metaphor, not as poetry, but as literal fact. The story you are telling yourself right now about who you are, what you are capable of, what life has given you or withheld from you, that story is not a commentary on reality. It is not a reflection of something outside you. It is the very thing that is creating what you call your life. You are not observing yourself. You are constructing yourself, word by word, thought by thought, in the silent conversation you are having with yourself every hour of every day, and the world, obliging as it is reflecting back to you the sum total of that inner speech. This is not philosophy. This is mechanics. This is law. And if you have clicked on this today, it is because somewhere within you, you have begun to suspect that the story you have been telling is not the one you wish to live. That is good. That is the beginning. Because the moment you realize that you are the author, you can pick up the pen and write a new line. Most of us do not think of ourselves as having a story. We think we simply are who we are, shaped by what has happened to us, what others have said about us, what our circumstances have confirmed. But Neville Goddard taught that consciousness is the only reality and everything else is its projection. That includes the identity is not a given. That identity is not a given. It is not stamped onto you by birth or event. It is a habit of thought. It is a script you have been repeating so often that it feels true. And because you have assumed it to be true, it has become true in your world. But here is the key that changes everything. You can assume something different. You can tell yourself a different story. And when you do, when you dare to do it fully and persistently, the whole structure of your experience reorganizes itself to match the new assumption. Welcome. If you are here for the first time, this channel is dedicated to the teachings of Neville Goddard, one of the most profound and practical mystics of the 20th century. We explore his principles not as theory, but as tools you can use today, tonight, right now. In this episode, we are going to identify the story you have been telling yourself about who you are. We are going to examine it closely, without judgment, but with clarity. And then we are going to do something that may feel radical. We are going to replace it, not vaguely, not someday, but exactly. I am going to show you how to do it, how often to do it, and with what words and feeling. By the end of this conversation, you will not only understand that the story you tell yourself is real, you will know how to become the author of a new one. So settle in. This is not information you consume and forget. This is a turning point. Let us begin with the most important question you may never have asked yourself directly. What is the story of me that is currently on loop in my inner conversation? Most people, if you stop them in the street and ask them to describe themselves, will give you a resume or a list of roles. I am a teacher. I am someone who struggles with money. I am someone who has bad luck in relationships. But that is not what I am asking you to identify. I am asking you to listen, truly listen, to the silent voice that runs beneath your waking awareness. Because you are talking to yourself all the time. You are narrating your experience. You are interpreting every event, every glance, every outcome, and you are weaving it into a consistent story about what kind of person you are. That story has themes. It has recurring lines, and it has power, because you believe it. Neville said again and again that your inner conversations are the causes of the circumstances of your life, not your wishes, not your hopes. Your inner conversations, what you say to yourself when no one is listening, what you assume to be true about yourself when you wake in the morning, when you look in the mirror, when you imagine your future. That assumption, that story, is the seed. And the world you walk through is the harvest. If you tell yourself, even quietly, even unconsciously, that you are unlucky, that good things happen to other people, that you always fall short, that you are too old or too young or too late, then that is the identity you are embodying. And life will furnish you with endless proof, not because it is true in some objective sense, but because consciousness creates reality. You are the operant power. What you assume, you become. So I want you to do something right now, or as soon as you are able to sit quietly for a few minutes. I want you to pay attention to the background commentary in your mind, not the surface thoughts, not the task list, but the low hum of self-definition that runs underneath. It might sound like this: I never get what I want. I am not the kind of person who succeeds easily. I am always behind. People do not take me seriously. I am always behind. People do not take me seriously. I am always behind, attractive enough, not talented enough. Or it might sound subtler. I am trying, but nothing changes. I am doing my best, but it is not enough. I am hopeful, but I have been disappointed before. Do you hear it? That quiet, persistent voice that is constantly telling you who you are, what you deserve, what you can expect. That is the story. And it is not a neutral report. It is a creative command. You are commanding your subconscious, which is the builder of your world, to continue creating circumstances that match that story. You are saying, "This is who I am," and your deeper mind says, "Yes," and so it is. Neville often spoke of a woman who came to him in distress. She had been trying for years to change her circumstances, to improve her finances, to find love, but nothing ever seemed to work. She had read the books, she had visualized, she had affirmed, and yet the same patterns repeated. Neville asked her a simple question: "What do you say to yourself about yourself?" At first she did not understand, but he pressed her. When something goes wrong, what do you tell yourself? When you imagine your future, what role do you see yourself playing? And slowly she began to see it. She realized that beneath all her efforts, she had been telling herself a story of limitation. She had been saying, silently but constantly, "I am the kind of person who struggles. I am not meant to have ease. I am always on the outside looking in." And no matter how much she visualized abundance or love, that deeper story was still running. It was the foundation. And you cannot build a new house on an old, cracked foundation. She had to go deeper. She had to identify the story, and then, deliberately, tell a new one. This is what most people miss. They try to add a desire on top of an unchanged self-concept. They try to imagine wealth while still thinking of themselves as poor. They try to imagine love while still believing they are unlovable. And it does not work, or it works briefly and then collapses, because the subconscious is always loyal to the dominant assumption. If your dominant assumption is "I am lacking," then even if you imagine abundance for a few minutes before bed, the other 23 hours of inner conversation will overwrite it. The story you tell most often is the story that wins. So the work is not to imagine a new circumstance while remaining the same person. The work is to imagine yourself as a different person, to change the story of me. Now, you may be thinking, "But my story is based on facts. I do not have money, that is a fact. I am alone, that is a fact. I am alone, that is a fact. I have failed before, that is a fact." And I tell you, those are not facts. They are conclusions. They are interpretations. They are past tenses. And you are not bound by past tenses unless you continue to assume them into the present. Neville taught that the past does not create the present. Consciousness creates the present, and consciousness is always now. You are not the sum of what has happened to you. You are the sum of what has happened to you. You are the sum of what you are assuming right now. An assumption, though false when first assumed, if persisted in, will harden into fact. That works in both directions. You have been assuming limitation, and it is hardened into fact. Now you will assume something different, and that too will harden into fact. The mechanism is neutral. It does not care which story you tell. It only cares that you are telling it with conviction. Let me give you another example. Neville once told the story of a man who had been unemployed for months. He was skilled, he was qualified, but every interview led nowhere. He began to tell himself, "I cannot get a job. No one wants me. I am unhireable." And of course, every rejection confirmed the story. He came to Neville not asking for a technique to get a job, but asking why the universe was against him. And Neville said, "The universe is not against you. You are against yourself. You are telling yourself a story of rejection, and the world is simply agreeing with you." The man protested. He said, "But I have been rejected. I am only acknowledging reality." And Neville said, "You are not acknowledging reality. You are creating it. Reality is not what has happened. Reality is what you are assuming now. Change the assumption, and the so-called facts will change." So the man, with Neville's guidance, began to tell himself a different story. He stopped saying, "I cannot get a job." He stopped rehearsing the rejections. Instead, he began to say silently and persistently, "I am employed. I am wanted. I am valued." He did not wait for evidence. He did not wait for the phone to ring. He assumed the new story first, and he lived in it mentally. even while the outer world had not yet shifted. He imagined the feeling of being employed. He imagined telling his wife, "I got the job." He imagined the handshake, the congratulations, and he did this not once, but repeatedly, until it felt natural, until it felt more real than the unemployment. And within 2 weeks, he received an offer, not because he got lucky, but because he changed the story he was telling himself about who he was. He stopped being the man who could not get hired, and he became the man who was in demand. And the world, as it always does, rearranged itself to reflect the new assumption. This is the principle. You are not a victim of your story. You are the author of it. But most people do not realize they are authoring anything. They think the story is happening to them. They think they are reporting on their life, when in fact they are scripting it. Every time you say, "I am not good at this, I always mess this up, I never have enough, this is just how I am," you are writing a line in the script. And the subconscious, which Neville called the servant, takes that line and makes it so. It does not argue. It does not judge. It simply creates the conditions that match your inner speech. So if you want a different life, you do not start by changing your circumstances. You start by changing your inner conversation. You start by telling yourself a different story about who you are. Now let us go deeper. How exactly do you replace the old story? Not in theory, but in practice. Not someday, but today, tonight, in the moments between waking and sleeping, in the silent spaces of your day. This is where the teaching becomes practical, and this is where most people stumble, because they do not realize how specific and how persistent they must be. Neville did not teach vague positive thinking. He taught precise assumption. He taught the deliberate construction of a new inner conversation and the deliberate repetition of it until it becomes the dominant voice. So let me walk you through it, step by step, exactly as Neville would have done. First, you must decide what the new story is. Not what you want to have, not what you hope will happen, but who you are now. Because remember, we are not trying to get something. We are trying to become someone. And once you become that person in consciousness, the things that belong to that person will appear. So ask yourself, if I were living the life I desire, who would I be? Not what would I have, but who would I be? Would I be confident? Would I be loved? Would I be successful? Would I be free? Choose the quality, the identity, the state, and then craft a simple statement, a single sentence that declares it as present fact. I am, not I will be, not I want to be. I am. Neville said the name of God is I am. When you say I am, you are speaking from the consciousness that creates worlds. So use it carefully, use it deliberately. I am prosperous. I am loved. I am confident. I am free. I am healthy. I am quantitative. I am free. I am healthy. I am wanted. Choose the one that most directly contradicts the old story. If the old story was I am not enough, the new story is I am more than enough. If the old story was I am all than enough, if the old story was I am always struggling, new story is I am me is. Make it present, make it simple. Second, you must repeat it, not once, not when you feel like it, but persistently, consistently, until it becomes the dominant assumption. Neville spoke often of the power of repetition in inner speech. He said that the inner conversations you repeat most often create the patterns of your life. So if you want a new pattern, you must repeat a new conversation. And I do not mean you say it a few times and hope for the best. I mean you saturate your consciousness with it. You say it in the morning when you wake. You say it as you move through your day. You say it when the old story tries to reassert itself. You say it in the moments of doubt, in the moments of evidence to the contrary, in the moments when your senses tell you nothing has changed. You say it anyway, because you are not reacting to the outer world. You are impressing the inner world. And the inner world, once impressed, will project itself outward. Neville told of a woman who wanted to change her self-concept entirely. She had been timid, overlooked, uncertain, for as long as she could remember. Her whole life had been shaped by the belief that she was insignificant. But she decided, with Neville's teaching, to tell herself a different story. She chose the phrase, I am confident and poised. That was all. Just those 4 words. But she repeated them constantly. She said them silently as she walked down the street. She said them before entering a room. She said them before speaking. She said them when her old feelings of inadequacy rose up. And at first it felt false. It felt like a lie, but she persisted. She did not wait to feel confident before saying it. She said it in order to become confident before saying it. She said it in order to become confident, and within weeks she began to notice changes. People responded to her differently. Opportunities came to her that had never come before. But more than that, she felt different. The old story, I am insignificant, began to fade. The new story, I am confident and poised, became the truth. Not because circumstances changed first, but because she changed first in consciousness, and the circumstances followed. Third, you must feel it. This is crucial. Neville said again and again, feeling is the secret. It is not enough to repeat words mechanically. You must enter into the feeling of the words. You must feel yourself to be the person you are claiming to be, because the subconscious does not respond to words alone. It responds to the feeling of reality. So when you say, I am prosperous, do not just mouth the words. Feel the ease, the abundance, the security that prosperity brings. When you say, I am loved, feel the warmth, the acceptance, the joy of being cherished. When you say, I am loved, feel the warmth, the acceptance, the joy of being cherished. When you say, I am confident, feel the calm strength, the self-assurance, the groundedness. The feeling is the creative force. The feeling is what impresses the skunsi. And the way you cultivate the feeling is by imagining the reality that would produce it. Imagine someone congratulating you. Imagine someone congratulating you. Imagine looking at your bank account and feeling relief and satisfaction. Imagine walking into a room and feeling at home in your own skin. The scene does not have to be elaborate. It just has to produce the feeling. And then you dwell in that feeling. You steep yourself in it. You let it become familiar. Neville often used the phrase, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That is what you are doing here. You are not wishing for a new story. You are assuming it. You are living from it in imagination. And imagination is the creative power. Imagination is not fantasy. Imagination is the workshop of creation. It is where everything begins. So you go into imagination, and you see yourself as the person the new story describes. You hear others speaking to you as that person. You feel what that person feels. And you do this until the imagined state feels more real than the current circumstances, until it feels natural, until it feels like home. That is the moment of shift. That is when assumption becomes fact. How often should you do this? As often as needed. Neville said that the inner conversation should be controlled. That means you are not letting your mind run wild, rehearsing the old story, worrying, doubting, contradicting. You are directing it. You are directing it. Every time you catch yourself slipping into the old conversation, you stop. You do not fight it. You do not resist it. You simply redirect. You say the new line. You return to the new story. At first, this will require vigilance. The old story is a habit. It has momentum. But every time you choose the new story instead, you weaken the old groove and deepen the new one. Neville compared it to a needle on a record. If the record has played the same song 1,000 times, the groove is deep. But if you lift the needle and place it on a new track, and you keep returning to that new track, eventually the old groove loses its pull. The new song becomes the one you hear most often. And that is what you are doing with your inner conversation. You are changing the track. Let me be very clear about what you are replacing the old story with. You are replacing it with the story of the person who already is what you desire to be. Not the person trying to become it. Not the person hoping for it. The person who is it now. This is the essence of Neville's teaching. You do not become in the future what you affirm now. You are now what you affirm, and the future unfolds to match it. So if you desire wealth, you do not say, I will be wealthy. You say, I am wealthy. If you desire love, you do not say, I will find love. You say, I am loved. If you desire success, you do not say, I will find love. You say, I am successful. You say, I am successful. And you say it not as a technique to get something, but as the truth of your being in this moment. Because in consciousness it is true. The outer world may not yet reflect it, but that does not matter. You are not waiting for the outer world to give you permission to feel it. You are claiming it now in imagination, and the outer world will catch up. Neville once said, creation is finished. Everything that could ever be, already is. All possible states, all possible identities already exist in consciousness. You are not creating something new. You are selecting which state you will occupy, and the way you occupy a state is by assuming it, by thinking from it, speaking from it, feeling from it. So the new story is not something you are building brick by brick over years. It is something you step into now. You appropriate it. You dare to assume it, even though your senses deny it, even though your bank account or your mirror or your circumstances say otherwise. You assume it anyway, and in the assuming it becomes real. There is a passage Neville often quoted from Scripture, "Whosoever shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith." The mountain is the obstacle, the old story, the apparent fact that contradicts your desire. And you speak to it. You do not beg it to move. You do not hope it will move. You command it to move by assuming it is already gone. You tell yourself a different story. And if you do not doubt in your heart, if you persist in the assumption, the mountain moves. The old story dissolves. The new story becomes the lived reality. This is not metaphor. This is the mechanics of consciousness. Let me give you a personal example from Neville's own life. He told the story many times of how he desired to leave Barbados and come to America. He was young. He had no money, no connections, no means. But he wanted it intensely. And rather than focus on the lack, rather than tell himself the story of "I am stuck, I cannot afford it, I have no way," he began to tell himself a different story. He imagined himself in New York. He felt the reality of it. He saw himself there. He heard the sounds. He felt the pavement under his feet. He did not imagine the journey. He did not imagine buying a ticket or convincing anyone. He imagined the end. He imagined the wish fulfilled. And he repeated that inner experience over and over until it felt natural, until it felt natural, until it felt natural, until it felt more real than Barbados. And then, without his doing anything outwardly to make it happen, circumstances arranged themselves. Money came, an opportunity came, and he found himself in New York, exactly as he had imagined. He did not make it happen by effort. He made it happen by assumption. He told himself a different story about who he was and where he was, and the world conformed. This is the promise. If you change the story you tell yourself, you change your life. Not eventually, not afterly, not eventually, not afterly. As soon as the new assumption becomes dominant, and the way you make it dominant is by repetition, feeling, and persistence. You do not let a day go by without affirming the new story. You do not let an hour go by, if possible, without redirecting your inner conversation back to the new assumption. This is not a burden. This is a joy, because you are finally taking control of the one thing you can control, your own consciousness. You are finally stepping into your power as the creator of your experience. And once you realize that power, once you see it work even once, you will never go back to the old passivity, the old victimhood, the old acceptance of circumstances as fixed. Now let us make this even more practical. Let us talk about the specific practice you can use starting tonight. Neville taught many techniques, but the one most directly related to changing your self-concept, your story of who you are, is what he called the control of inner talking, and the use of the state akin to sleep. So here is what you are going to do. Tonight, as you lie down to sleep, you are going to enter into a quiet, relaxed state. You do not need to be fully asleep, but you want to be drowsy, comfortable, on the edge of sleep. Neville called this the state akin to sleep, and he said it is the most creative state you have access to. In this state, the conscious mind is quiet, the critical faculties are subdued, and the seed. The conscious mind is quiet, the critical faculties are subdued, and the seed. Once you are in that drowsy state, you are going to bring to mind the new story, the simple statement you have chosen. I am loved. I am prosperous. I am confident, whatever it is. And you are going to repeat it silently, gently, as if you are lulling yourself to sleep with it. You are not forcing it, you are not straining. You are simply saying it over and over, with the feeling of its truth. I am loved. I am loved. And as you say it, you let yourself feel it. You imagine a scene, brief and simple, that implies it is true. Perhaps you imagine someone you care about looking at you with affection. Perhaps you imagine yourself in a situation where you are clearly valued and cherished. You do not need to see every detail. You just need to feel the reality of it. And you loop that feeling, that scene, that phrase, until you fall asleep be the new story. Why is this so powerful? You let the last thought before sleep be the new story. Why is this so powerful? Because in sleep, the subconscious takes over completely. And whatever you impress upon it in that liminal moment before sleep becomes the foundation of the next day's experience. Neville said, "Never go to sleep feeling discouraged or defeated. Never go to sleep rehearsing the old story, because you are programming your subconscious for the next cycle of creation. Instead, go to sleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Go to sleep in the new story, and when you wake, that story will be closer to manifestation. You may not see the evidence immediately, but in consciousness the work has been done, and consciousness always externalizes. Do this every night. Make it your practice. Before sleep, you are no longer the person with the problem, the person with the old story. You are the person who already is what you desire to be. You assume it. You feel it. You sleep in it. You sleep in it. And night by night the assumption hardens into fact. This is not wishful thinking. This is the deliberate use of the creative power of consciousness. This is what Neville meant when he said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain faithful to that assumption." Faithful does not mean hopeful. Faithful means loyal. It means you do not waver. You do not return to the old story just because the day brought challenges. You return again and again to the new assumption, and you let sleep seal it. During the day, you practice the same control of inner talking. You notice when the old story arises, and you do not fight it. You do not shame yourself for it. You simply replace it. If you catch yourself thinking, "I am not good enough," you stop, and you say, "I am more than enough." If you catch yourself thinking, "Nothing ever works out for me," you stop, and you say, "Everything is always working out for me." You do this gently but firmly. You are not battling your thoughts. You are redirecting them. You are training yourself to live from the new assumption. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, the new story is not something you have to consciously choose. It is simply who you are. The assumption has become your identity. And when assumption becomes identity, manifestation is automatic. There is an exercise Neville gave that I want to share with you. He called it the ladder exercise, and he used it to prove to his students that assumption creates reality. He would tell them, "Tonight, before you fall asleep, imagine yourself climbing a ladder. See it, feel it, climb it rung by rung until the imaginal act feels real. Do this for several nights. But during the day, tell yourself, 'I will not climb a ladder.' Affirm the opposite, and then watch what happens. Invariably, within days, circumstances would arise that required them to climb a ladder. And then watch what happens. And then watch what happened. And then watch happened. A friend would ask for help reaching something. A job would require it. Something would happen that made climbing a ladder necessary. And the point was not the ladder. The point was this: what you assume in consciousness must externalize, even if your conscious mind denies it. The imaginal act, done with feeling in the state akin to sleep, is more powerful than your waking affirmations. So if you can imagine yourself being the person your new story describes, if you can do that with feeling and persistence, the outer world must conform. It has no choice. Consciousness is the only reality. So your practice is this: control your inner talking throughout the day, and every night before sleep, imagine yourself as the person the new story describes. Do not imagine becoming that person. Imagine being that person now. Hear what that person hears. See what that person sees. Feel what that person feels. Let the imaginal act be simple but real, and then let it go. Do not obsess over it during the day. Do not check for results. Just live from the assumption. Live as if the story is true, because in consciousness it is, and consciousness is the only reality. The outer world is just a delayed reflection. Be patient with the delay, but be faithful to the assumption. Let me tell you about a student of Neville's who transformed her life by changing her story. She had been telling herself for years that she was a failure. She had tried many things, and none of them had worked out the way she hoped. She began to define herself by those failures. She would say, "I am just not lucky. I am not the kind of person who succeeds." And of course every new attempt ended the same way, confirming the story. But when she came to Neville's lectures, something shifted. She realized that she was not a failure who was trying to become successful. She was consciousness, and consciousness could assume any state. So she decided to tell herself a new story. She began to say, "I am successful in all I do." She did not wait for evidence. She did not wait for the next attempt. She said it now, and every night before sleep she imagined herself receiving congratulations, being recognized, feeling the satisfaction of accomplishment. She did this faithfully, even when the outer circumstances screamed otherwise. And then something remarkable happened. Not all at once, but gradually, opportunities began to appear. Ideas came to her. People reached out to her. Things that had been blocked suddenly opened, and within months she had manifested success in an area she had given up on. But more importantly, she no longer saw herself as a failure. The identity had changed. The story had changed. And because the story changed, that is the power you have. That is the power you are using right now, whether you know it or not. So why not use it deliberately? Why not tell a story that uplifts you, that empowers you, that reflects the truth of who you really are? Because here is the deeper truth, the truth that Neville always returned to at the end of every teaching. You are not really changing a story. You are remembering who you always were. You are not becoming something new. You are uncovering what has always been. The story of limitation, the story of I am not enough, that was the false story. That was the dream. And you are waking up. You are waking up to the truth that you are consciousness. You are the operant power. You are the I am, and I am is limitless. You are the operant power. You are the I am, and I am is limitless. I am is eternal. I am is the creative force of the universe. When you say I am loved, you are not wishing to be loved. You are recognizing that love is your nature. When you say I am prosperous, you are not trying to get wealth. You are acknowledging that abundance is your birthright. When you say I am confident, you are not pretending. You are claiming the truth that you are the creator of your world. And what could be more confidence-inspiring than that? Neville often said, "You are not a man seeking God. You are God seeking expression." The whole journey is not about acquiring something outside yourself. It is about realizing what is already within. And the story you tell yourself is either a story of remembering or a story of forgetting. For so long, you have been telling the story of forgetting. I am this body. I am these circumstances. I am this past. I am this limitation. But now you are beginning to tell the story of remembering. I am consciousness. I am the creator. I am the infinite, expressing as this individual. And as you tell that story, everything changes. Expressing as this individual. And as you tell that story, everything changes. Not because you are forcing change, but because you are aligning with truth. And truth has power. Truth transforms. So let me ask you again, what story are you telling yourself? Not the story you tell others, not the persona you present to the world, but the private, silent story you present to the world, but the private, silent story you tell yourself in the quiet moments. Is it a story of fear or faith? Is it a story of limiting or limitless? Is it a story of fear or faith? Is it a story of limites? And whatever story it is, know this. You can change it right now. You do not need permission. You do not need to wait for circumstances to improve. You do not need to earn the right to a better story. You simply claim it. You assume it. You live from it. And the world, obliging and neutral as it is, will reflect a new assumption back to you. This is not self-deception. This is self-creation. You are not lying to yourself. You are impressing a new truth upon the only substance that matters, your own consciousness. And because consciousness is the only reality, what you impress there becomes real everywhere. The outer world is not the cause of your story. Your story is the cause of the outer world. That is the great reversal of understanding that Neville taught. Most people think they are narrating what is, but you are narrating what will be. Your inner conversation is the script, and life is the performance. So write a better script. Tell a truer story. Speak from the end. Assume the wish fulfilled. Sell a tweet. and watch as the world rearranges itself to match the new narrative. I want you to understand the magnitude of what I am telling you. This is not a small thing. This is the key to everything. Every desire you have, every change you want to see, every longing in your heart, it all hinges on this one principle. The story you tell yourself is real. Change the story, and you change the reality. It does not matter what has been. It does not matter what others have said. It does not matter what the circumstances are right now. None of that is the truth. The truth is what you are assuming now, and if you assume something different, the so-called truth will shift to match it. This is the law. This is how it works, and it works for everyone, because consciousness is the only reality. Let me leave you with one more example, one that shows the totality of this principle. Neville told of a man who had been sick for years. The doctors had no answers. The man had resigned himself to his condition. He told himself, I am sick. I will always be sick. This is just my body. And of course the sickness persisted. But then he heard Neville speak, and he understood. He realized that he had been telling himself a story of sickness, and that story was creating the condition. So he decided to tell a different story. He began to say, I am healthy. I am strong. I am whole. And every night before sleep he imagined himself doing things he could not currently do. He imagined himself moving freely, feeling vibrant, hearing his doctor say, you are healed. He did not try to figure out how it would happen. He did not focus on the symptoms. He focused on the new story. He lived from it. He felt it, and within weeks the condition began to improve. Within months it was gone. The doctors called it a spontaneous remission, but it was not spontaneous. It was the inevitable result of a changed assumption. He stopped being the man who was sick, and he became the man who was healthy, and his body, which is nothing but consciousness made visible, conformed to the new identity. That is the power you have. That is the power you are using right now, in this moment, with every thought, every assumption. You are the author of your story. You are the creator of your reality. And if you do not like the story you have been living, then write a new one. Start today. Start tonight. Start in the next quiet moment you have. Listen to the inner conversation. Identify the old story. And then, deliberately and persistently, replace it with the new. Say it. Feel it. Sleep in it. Live from it. Do not wait for evidence. Do not wait for verbals. Do not wait for the world to change first. You change first in consciousness, and the world will follow. The story you tell yourself is real, not metaphorically real, not someday real, real now, real in the only place that reality is ever created, in consciousness. So if you want a different life, tell yourself a different story. Tell it with conviction. Tell it with feeling. Tell it until it feels more true than the evidence of your senses. And then watch as the evidence shifts to match the story. This is not magic. This is the way creation works. And you are the one wielding the pen. So go now into your day, or into your night, with this understanding. You are not a character in someone else's story. You are the author of your own. And the story you tell yourself, the story you repeat in the silence of your own mind, is the story that will become your life. Make it a good one. Make it a true one. Make it a story of the person you know deep down you really are, the person who is confident, who is loved, who is abundant, who is free. That person is not a distant goal. That person is a present assumption. Assume it now. Live from it now, and the whole world will conspire to prove you right. The story you tell yourself is real. Now you know what that means. Now you know what that means. Now you know what to do. Go and live it.